Hello, and welcome to New Valley Studios. My name is Jason. This is Drum Lessons Part 2, Basic Music Theory. So get your thinking caps. Last week we talked about staffs and measures. Staffs are where you are vertically. It refers to the vertical way of looking at sheet music. And we are only using notes on one specific line on the staff, and that's because we're only using snare notes right now. Measures are your horizontal movement on the sheet music, and that's where you are in time. So as time moves forward, you move left to right, like reading, so you can read sheet music and play it. I'm starting this course with 4/4 time signature only, just to start with. Eventually we'll start changing it up. It's called common time for a reason. It's the most common time signature out of everything. So if you get really good at 4/4 time, then that should get you 80% of the way everywhere. And it makes the note values make a lot more sense in common time. So that's what we're sticking with for right now. These are quarter notes. This is what they look like, and this is what they sound like. Whenever I play anything in this course, and it's a good habit for everybody, let 4 beats pass before you start playing. Now these symbols are called rests, these squiggly alien line things. So each time one of these comes up on the click, you don't play anything. It's just silence. This is how you would play this piece of sheet music. Here are some other note values. On snare, this would sound exactly the same as the other piece of sheet music that I just played for you. But you will never see anything written like this for snare because it doesn't make sense, and I will explain why. But let's get into these note values first. So the first thing that you see is called a whole note. So the first 4 measures are whole notes. They take up the space of an entire measure, so they take up 4 beats. Measures 5, 6, 7, and 8 have 2 half notes each, so they each take up half a measure. They each take up 2 beats. And after that, you have measures 9, 10, 11, and 12, which each have quarter notes, which you're used to. Now, why are these not the same for other instruments, but they are the same for drums? It's because the drums, specifically snare, maybe you'll see these other notes on the drum set a little bit because of crash cymbals. They have sustain, but this does not have what's called sustain. Every other instrument has sustain, and that's the ability for a note to ring out for a long time. But when you hit a drum, it has no sustain. It just has a steep drop off in volume. That's why in drum sheet music and things like that, you won't see a longer note value than a quarter note because there's no reason for it. You don't have a drum that will just ring out for a long time. If this doesn't make a lot of sense, it will soon. I have some examples. So you can see how these 2 pieces of sheet music do not sound the same on any instrument, but they do on drums. The best way for me to explain the difference between these 2 pieces of music on an instrument that has sustain, like this keyboard, is for me to show you. So this is how the first piece of music would sound. Now this is how the second piece of music would sound. Spooky. So you can see how these long notes, half notes and whole notes, they don't make sense on a snare because you just hit a snare and the volume just dies really fast. So that's why you're not going to see longer note values than a quarter note, except for rests. This is a sheet that I made of different rests. The first measure is a whole note rest. So that's what it looks like, and it takes up the entire measure. The second measure is two half note rests. So it's like the half notes. Two of those takes up the whole measure, and then it's completely filled up with space. Then the third measure is what you learned earlier today, which was four quarter note rests. So after that, measure 4 through 9, I have just like an exercise so that you can see how you could fit different things into measures to make them completely full. And so this is an exercise that I've made that I will show you how it sounds. I know there's a very small difference between whole notes and half notes, but there is a slight difference, so make sure to take a note of it. The whole note is hanging off of the top like a stalactite, and the half notes are coming up from the bottom like a stalagmite. All right, I'm going to start this piece of music from measure 4 so that you can see how I can pattern together different things. So check this out. Remember, I let 4 beats pass before I do anything, and this starts with a rest. So it'll be 6 because it's a half note rest. Here's another practice that I came up with. This is to start practicing limb independence based on concepts that we have learned today. And so you'll go through one cycle of one hand. So let's say your right hand doing the quarter notes, the consistent quarter notes, and then your left hand would be everything that the diamond is. And then it restarts and you switch hands. So check this out. You might be asking yourself, why do I need to know this stuff if I'm a drummer? Well, you need to know notes that you're not going to use, even if you're not going to use them like whole notes and half notes. You won't use them except for maybe crashing a cymbal and then catching it on the sustain after the amount of time of the note has passed. But you still need to know how to communicate with other musicians. And it's really annoying when any member of a band doesn't know how to communicate with everybody else. So it's important for you to know this stuff. Remember, talent, my favorite definition of talent anyway, talent is a mix between what you understand with your mind, so your understanding of music theory, but then it's also your ability to apply it. So if one of those things are imbalanced, you should work on it. They're both very important. I really hope that this was pretty simple stuff for you, and I hope that you learned something. It'll definitely get more complicated fast in more sessions and more lessons, but for now, this is where I'm going to leave it. I want everything to be bite-sized pieces. I want everything to be very understandable if you watch these videos in order. And I want you to feel like if you sit down and watch these, then you'll actually be pretty knowledgeable about drums and how to communicate about them. Practice this stuff, make sure it's pretty easy. I'll see you in the next video. My name's Jason. This has been New Valley Studios. Thank you for joining us on our drum lessons. Have a good day.